Hi, today I would like to teach you about a really important and very probably interesting for you astrological period in your life. I'm going to talk about the dark night of the soul. And of course, it might sound really scary for you. You might think that I'm going to be talking about the most difficult time in your life, and you won't be far from the truth because what I'm going to explain to you how to find out when this period in your life will come will indeed show you one of the lower periods in your life, one of the more testing periods in your life, when you're more susceptible to difficulties, more inclined to suffering, so to speak, when fate has dealt your hand, when it's not about expansion, but it's about contraction. And there are always such moments. It's cyclical, everything. And for you to find out this, for you to learn out how to find this spirit, you need to go to my website, astrolada.com, go to my birth chart calculator, and I want you to enter your exact time of birth, place of birth, date and everything. If you don't know your exact time of birth, please enter at least, if you know if it's in the morning or in the evening, enter the approximate time within 3 or 4 hours, because we're trying to find the position of your moon. We're trying to find your moon sign. And once you have this, scroll down and you will see a table which says Sun, Ascendant, Moon. Just look at the sign of the moon, in particular the sign of the moon. And then I will give you on the side of the screen certain dates and certain years when Saturn is or was or going to be in the same sign as the sign of your moon. And I will write what sign it is. Just find out what your moon sign is and see when Saturn was or will be in that same sign. And this will be a period of usually about 2.5-year period while Saturn is passing through your moon sign, when things get tougher. And why is it Saturn? Why is it the moon that is so important? Why is not the sun sign? Say, why is it not if you're born in April and you're Aries, the sun was in Aries, why is it not when Saturn is passing through this sign that is as difficult as when it's passing during the moon? Because the moon is the most sensitive, is the most vulnerable and gentle side of the person. It's your inner world. It's how you perceive, it's the glasses you wear, and how you perceive reality. Basically, if someone is born with a very afflicted moon in the horoscope, they'll often, most of their life, they'll be negative people, and they would expect everything to be hard, So this is your mental set, basically, that you're born with. It's so important. It's so much more important often than the sun sign. And if someone is born with a very optimistic moon with Jupiter, for instance, or really well positioned in the horoscope, this will be a person who always believes in everything, and they tend to attract. They're very happy always. They're very happy clappy, And you see, there are such extreme types of people, and that's why your moon is how you perceive the world, how you also perceive yourself. And Saturn, once every 29 years passes through the same sign as the moon. And when it does, Saturn is the heaviest, the most densest planet, the grossest. It slows down vibration, and slowed down vibration correspond to fear, to anger, to negativity, to self-doubt, to worry. And when Saturn higher vibrations correspond to happiness, But low vibrations is everything becomes more inert, everything becomes slowed down, everything becomes denser and grosser, and hence the more negative emotions connected to this. So when Saturn is passing for about 2.5 years in the same sign as the moon, and it's not always that intense, not all these 2.5 years are so intense. Usually the most intense period is when Saturn is exactly a few degrees before and a few degrees after the moon, but that's too complex for me to explain how to find. But usually the whole period when Saturn is the same sign as the moon, and often Vedic astrology and Vedic Indian, they say that the dark night of the soul, usually the more difficult period, lasts for altogether 7 years. When Saturn was in the previous sign, before the sign of the moon, in the sign of the moon, and in the sign following the moon. It's a very long period. So they're basically saying that once for 7 years, in every 30 years, you're somehow less supported, life is more difficult, more challenging. Uh, but I've normally seen that the most acute period is when Saturn is in the exact same sign as the moon. And when it's in the previous sign of the moon and in the moon after, and in the sign after, you don't feel it emotionally that difficult. It might be still not such a period of rise and growth. It's usually a period more of a contraction and centering within rather than expansion, of consolidation rather than expansion. It's not a period when you grow big or you know, uh, when you're very noticeable out there. But the most intense psychologically period is while Saturn is in the same sign. And as we said, emotions go down. A person starts, the moon is how you perceive yourself, your self-image. So the person becomes much more tough on themselves. They become much more self-critical. They start thinking lower of themselves and saying, oh, what have I achieved? I remember when Saturn passed over my moon, I was feeling I have to do something important in my life. It's time. It's time. So I started trying doing businesses. But the thing is, and I started like feeling it's not enough what I'm now. I want more, and I'm being very critical on myself. So a person tends to try and beat themselves into being more organized, more disciplined, more serious, to restrict their socializing. And that's the best effect when it comes from within. This self-teacher and self-criticism that Saturn is. When it comes from within, so you try to organize your life more and try to, be more serious about your future. But often this comes from outside, the criticism, and it comes from outside. So the circumstances around you become unsupportive. Most often, this is what I've noticed. So because the moon is your support system, what you can rely on, your daily needs, your emotional needs, your physical needs, your material needs as well. And when Saturn suppresses it, all of these are reduced, all of these are restricted. So often this can be a period of 2.5 years or around that time when you financially are doing worse, you're not, or you have a more restricted somehow financially, or just somehow your material circumstances are not as rosy as they've been before. But not for everyone. For some people, it's a time of when they feel emotionally unsupported. It means that a lot of people from their life disappear, or they disconnect themselves from a lot of people, because moon is also how you can connect to another person, the emotions of you, how you can attach to another person. And Saturn is a separating influence, so it can separate you from emotional attachments to other people. So often people suffer unsupportive relationships in this period, whether with partners, with lovers, or with other important people in their life with whom they form emotional attachment. And sometimes people, sometimes someone can leave you, or you might retreat from others. But even if you're surrounded by many people, you would feel quite disconnected often, and you feel quite lonely. Saturn passing over the moon, you feel lonely. You might be missing someone. You might be, just there is a sense of loneliness. That's all I can say. An emotional disconnection, because Saturn is a drying up influence. It's desiccating. It's a cold. It's an influence that makes things cold and more detached. So a person detaches emotionally from others more, or somehow it's even becomes like cut off, emotionally. And sometimes it's good, because when you become emotionally detached, you have a better chance to look more realistically and to make a better perspective and restructuring of who is the person, who are the people, the real people in your life. You don't look at life through rose-colored glasses. Actually, you look a bit too realistically, and you can reassess who are the real people, and only those who are really proper people in your life, they remain during this period. The others somehow disperse, go away, or somehow you detach themselves from you. You see the reality of these people. Only relationships which are real also survive Saturn transiting moon. If you lost a relationship or a close one during Saturn moon, then don't worry. This person was not productive for your authentic happiness, or was somehow unhealthy, insalubrious in some way. It was not a relationship or that was going to bring you happiness and fulfillment. It was taking more from you. And when Saturn comes, it separates us from those unhealthy relationships, even if at the moment you don't think so. At the moment you might be really upset about it. Um, Saturn, so that's why I said Saturn passing the moon can be more lonely periods. Also, I said you feel unsupported emotionally and financially, and it's a period of uh, your support around you, things that you've been able to rely on for a long time, for years, kind of dissolves or falls apart, and then new support system. You have to build a new support system for yourself. The moon is your support system, as I said. So often people might be, younger people, when Saturn passes over the moon, might be separating from their parents, going to live on their own, because the moon also symbolizing property, place of living where your home, your family, like mother and nurturing parents. And when Saturn comes, usually you separate from your country of origin or from your family, or you move to live somewhere else. Often Saturn passing over the moon, I've seen it, people relocate, change place of living, within this 2.5 year period. And as I said, you feel less supported, your support, Saturn, sorry, I'm losing a bit my train of thought. Yes, the support system that Saturn wants to deprive us of what we've been able to rely till now. So maybe some source of money we've been relying till now is cut off. People we've been relying are cut off. Places, circumstances in our life are no longer available. So we only, during when Saturn passes the moon, we only can rely on ourselves. That's one thing you should remember. Saturn over the moon, you are left to own devices, basically. Your other sources are cut off, and you're left to rely on yourself. And you have to find this inner strength. And you have to find, and you basically, this spirit is when you find other people who help you, or other places, or other sources of strength that help you, other support systems, which are more real, which will be more valid for your life for the next 30 years, because you're just starting a new period when Saturn is in the same sign as the moon, a new 30-year cycle. And like every ending, you're clearing up the past, and you're demolishing a lot of things, and you're starting from scratch, so to speak. And all beginnings are usually moments of more deprivation. They're moments of more hard work. They're moments of more like like pioneers. They had, when they started something new, they had to go and live in much more harder environments around them. The same way when Saturn is passing over the moon, the environment is a bit more hostile, and you have to be a bit of a pioneer when it happens. You just have to persevere. Persevere and endure, basically. Then, and don't get too down when you're going through that, because just say to yourself, this is the start of a new cycle for me. It might be hard now, but I'm laying the foundations of my new bright future. The connections I'll make now, the businesses or whatever I'll start now, you will not immediately see the results of these things. While Saturn is in the same sign, they will feel much more hard work as well, and often sometimes even unpromising. But when Saturn starts moving away, these things will start giving fruits. Believe me, they will. And often while Saturn is in the same sign as the moon, you don't, even the things you're trying to start, they're much harder, they're much more work. For some people, the best manifestations is that these people, lay new foundations, start new things. But they only start flourishing later on, as I said. But for some people, it doesn't even work. They just trying certain, like a newborn is trying here and there, and it's just something. Saturn is blocking the further development of those events, like trying to start the work, or trying, just going into blind alleys is often such kind of period. But again, I say, whatever you build during this period is going to be the foundation for your life in the next 30 years. And what else? As I said, the moon can represent also the mother, and Saturn is a suppressing planet, so you can have problems with the mother. The worst might happen sometimes. I don't wish it for anyone, but it's not for, it's rare. It's not always that when Saturn passes over your moon, your mother passes away. Or other female figures in your life, like women, older women, or maternal figures, or figures who you rely on emotional support for. They either go away, they disappear, or you disconnect from yourself from them, or in the worst case scenario, they pass away, but I don't wish it to anyone. And you learn to find strength within yourself. Saturn, whenever there is a strong Saturn influence, and usually with the moon, when Saturn passes over, the moon is the most intense one, is when people uh, are called to rely on themselves, to summon their own inner strength, and to start a new beginning and to build the foundation, as I said. Anyway, please don't worry. I've passed through mine. It was a bit of a more intense period. I changed quite a few. I changed 2 or 3 places of living. I changed a couple of relationships. I was feeling sometimes lonely and embittered, but it's not as bad as it sounds. And when you're going through that period, you just say to yourself, "That's as bad as it's gonna get for the that I'm at the lowest of the cycle for the next 30 years." So after that is only upwards. After that, when Saturn starts moving away from the moon, you only can move forward. And it's a time of germination right now. It's a time of consolidation, and then you can start expanding further. Not everyone will suffer during this transit so much. People who are more introverted, more looking inwards, more self-analytical, and like spending time alone. People who like investigating or spending time researching something or reading or self-knowledge, developing self-knowledge, more, as I said, more introverted activities, more alone activities. These people might actually thrive during this period and feel much more happy and find this period as very productive in their life when they were very focused on inner work or on achieving something or on working something which was not so much to do with the outer world and achievements as it was to do with themselves or which would later give results. And also people who, for instance, I've seen this transit on people who are in university and they just had to work as well, support themselves and study. So they had very little time to socialize, very little time to shine and, have fun as the other students. But they didn't feel depressed because they knew they're doing this for a reason. It will give fruits late into their life. When Saturn, 4 or 5 years later, Saturn moves away further from their moon sign, and this is when they graduate and it's all it's all paid off. So you should not worry always when Saturn is in the same sign of the moon, especially if you have a meaning and a reason to work hard and to isolate yourself more and to be more introverted. And even if the system is unsupportive, say you have to work for yourself, you can't rely on your parents anymore, you have to work harder than other times because you're starting a new business, for instance, and in many cases, it's time of when you're, as I said, more inner-centered, or people who like spending time on their own, they'll feel very happy and joyful during this period. This will be a period, sometimes even they can get discouraged because Saturn has this lowering vibration, but on the whole, they will see the reason and the meaning why they're going through these most Spartan conditions in their life, more hard work and more, rather than parting or expanding or growth or getting acculation, getting recognition all the time. It's more inwardly. But people who are outer worldly focused, as I said, who look for achievements, who are more dynamic people, more outer world centered, they will find it more difficult, who are not so introspective. This might be because all these things are suppressed in their life and they're blocked somehow, so these people find it much harder than others. But if you know what is coming to you, if you're about to go through this transit, at least you can prepare yourself psychologically. So when it comes, whichever type of person you are, you know what to expect and you will not worry so much. You'll know when it's going to end, you'll know how long it will last, and you'll have the upper hand, at least psychologically.